Yes, it's about that time again for That's Natalie, the podcast. I usually tape on Wednesdays and put it out, but life happens. So I'll be honest, sometimes it's going to be on Wednesday, sometimes it's going to be on Thursday. But because I was delayed by a day, I have a great topic. And I think it's going to be a funny topic as well. Dating. Yes, yes, yes. I'm going to talk about dating. Now, I'm not talking about dating now because I've been married for that's that. I've been married for 6 years, but I've been with my husband in total for 13. So we dated for 7, and then we got married for 6. But what I'm coming at is dating when prior to this marriage, because what it was is I'm going to have a twofold for this one. So it might be a little bit longer. So the twofold was me dating when I was younger, and then I got married to my first husband, and I got divorced, and then I started somewhat dating. I don't be honest, it wasn't really dating, but it was funny. And then I met my husband. But the reason why I wanted to talk about it because I've been seeing a lot of things on Instagram and TikTok and different things about relationship goals and all this other mess. And I'm just gonna be honest about it. The goal is you be happy. That's the goal. In my 50 years of life, I think, and again, I'm not a specialist, I'm not a doctor, so I'm putting a disclaimer because the last thing I want is somebody to come back and say, Nelly said, Nelly said. No, 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 no. I'm just giving my opinion of what I've experienced in my youth as well as in my elders. But I just feel like it's a good thing to give out. I think nothing changes. One thing about history, it always repeats itself. It might be different, but it's still the same situation. And even for people of same sex, hey, same sex, same mess. So it don't make a difference. So everybody, I love everybody. I don't want everybody to listen. So I'm going to start in the beginning. So when I was around, I guess my 20s, I dated. And I remember I would have this long, long, long list of he got to have this and he got to do this and he got to be this and all this other mess. And then as you get older, the list went from 100 to 3. And my top 3 for me is what I look for in a man at that time was he had to love God, he had to love himself, and he had to love others. And why I look at it like that is because when a man loves God or any spiritual thing, because again, not everybody believes in God, and that's fine. Everybody has their own right to have their own faith and belief in things. Then you love above yourself. When a man loves himself, then that means he is not going to do anything to bring pain or hurt to his own body, mental, emotional, everything in that nature. And when he loves his family or others, that means he is not selfish. He's giving, he's kind. You know, that's the type of thing that my list of 104,566 options came down to 3, because again, life happens and you just feel like that. So I ended up dating back in the 90s was different. We didn't have multimedia, pretty much you just had to just pray and hope they got crazy. That's all you could do. You might know maybe a cousin or somebody might know them or sometimes they moved out the blue, but pretty much we was playing Russian roulette on dating back in the days. And that was fine. It is what it is. So it would be simple, Applebee's, movies, going to the park, it wasn't much, but it was enough to get to know the person to see if they were, could talk, have communicate, see what they are. And I realize like now with things, it's like it's a lot of expectations. And to be honest, I don't know why, because when I was on a date when I was in my 20s, I was just happy to get a free meal. I mean, it was free. I didn't have to pay for it. So that was to me that hell that was a great date. When the bill came, he paid, and I was good. But but now it's all of this. You got to take me here, and it has to be here, and they haven't really got to know you. I mean, I'm not all on the girls' team, but I'm not all on the boys' team. But I'm just giving some wisdom advice. Crazy's crazy. There's no discrimination in crazy. It could be a boy, it could be a girl. Usually crazy can crack between, depending on how good you are, 90 days is when you're good. Sometimes you can crack at a week, but all I know is I usually try my best when I used to date. It's just see how they act. You know, are they respectful of your boundaries? Do they allow you to talk when you are speaking? Do they look you in the eye? Can they hold a conversation? I'm not saying text you the conversation. I mean, like, hi, I'm such and such, and I'm this and that. But things are different. And again, I'm just going off of what it was back in the 90s. And then around, I think I got married in 2000. That was my first marriage. And then I got divorced about 4 years later. And when I got divorced, it was hard because one thing about dating after a divorce, and I'm going to help some people that might be going through a divorce or maybe still trying to get out here or they're scared. It is different. When you have reached the pinnacle of marriage, that's the highest relationship you can have. So when you come out of marriage and you go out in the dating world, there is nothing that anybody can do for you that is spectacular. You know what I'm saying? You done already had free meals. Not saying like free meals, but if you look at it, you've had meals with somebody for a long time. You've had, be honest, sexual relationships for free and immediately or spontaneously, or I'll be honest, some people might be getting divorced because they're getting none. So however it goes, it was there. So when you get out in the real world and you're dating again, yes, you're questionable because you done been with somebody for maybe some years or decades, and it's scary because things are different. I mean, I remember, and I'm not going to tell the website, like, because I know websites were really big when after I got divorced around the 2000, early 2000s, mid 2000s. Websites were out. I'm just going to name some. I'm not saying that I used them, but I just remember some of the names. So you had Christian's Meet, you had Match.com, you had fishing on catching on some fish or fishing on some fish, some type of fishing with website. You fishing for people, I don't know, gathering fish, something like that. I ain't gonna lie, it's making me kind of hungry. But anyway, you were on these sites. You were just trying to find people. And I remember, and I'm just gonna give a few examples. And I'm not gonna give the name of the site that I made them on, but I'll just, but by the time I tell you the story, you're gonna be like, oh, okay. So I had a date, and I didn't meet this person on the site. I actually met them because they were in my apartment complex. I will say this, and I'm going to do a disclaimer. Meeting people at your apartment complexes, there are some people that are married still that have met at your apartment complexes, and there are some of them that might be having more. So it just depends on the situation. So please, just move with caution and feel safe on what you're doing. So this individual I met, and he was at an apartment complex I lived at a long time ago, and he seemed cute. And he was like, okay, let's go on a date. I was like, fine. That would be great. I'm getting back out here. So he took me to dinner. So we went to dinner and he barely talked. So I was like, oh, okay. So this conversation is none. And we ate. And then he was like, let's go to the movies. So from there, we went to a movie. And now, for some reason, he now wants to have a conversation. Now, some people like to talk in the movies, not me. So I was not happy that the whole hour and a half meal that you could have talked to me freely is now being taken part in a quiet movie setting. So he would talk and I would just, I would smile and then he would keep talking. And that smile was turning into a frown. It was turning something. It was called annoyance. So after a while and midway through the story, I just said, could you just please shut up? And maybe that was mean at the time, but I knew that I was not going to be having a second date. And I was okay with that. That's okay. Sometimes second dates don't mean anything. I do believe when you go on dates, don't plan your wedding. You understand? I think when you go on dates, this is your introduction. To me, this is the time you just need to pay attention. You need to see how this person reacts around you. You need to see if this person can talk at appropriate times of the date, or, just see if he's not, what's that word? Crazy. Woo! Just like I remember on that show, to tell my age, what was that? Peeves Playhouse, where you would say a word and they would yell out. So the word today is crazy. Ah! But going back, that was one example of dating after my divorce. So a second one. So this second date that I had was it was with a man of I'll say a Caucasian man. I say that because I'm an African American woman. So because when you get a certain age, color really it really don't matter. I'll be honest. I know when I was younger, it does. Now my husband is black, so I'm not saying nothing bad, but I think you open up more because you just want a nice guy. You just want to just date. So I mean, I dated a lot of men out of my race after my divorce, and it taught me a lot. It taught me that men are the same. I had to laugh off that because it's the truth. Men are the same, regardless of their race. So with this one, I got off a website. This was supposed to be a Holier Than Thou website, but I remember that I did not want this person to pick me up. I think the rule of thumb for any woman, regardless if you're dating before or after marriage, meet at a place that you feel safe. Always leave a contact information with somebody that they know where you at. That's one thing I did. I told my sister I was meeting this guy at a Mexican restaurant. So, and then once you get there, just feel the person out. So I remember the gentleman, he got there and I was like, wow, he is very attractive. And he was like, wow, you're beautiful. And we really kicked it off. We kicked it off. The only thing I didn't like is he kept picking all over chips. Now, don't get me wrong. Mexican restaurants, they bring in chips. Now, what I was raised is that you take a chip and one chip and dip it and you eat it. Not put your hands on every chip. Figure out which one is the best and then dip. Because I don't know if you washed your hands before this date. I didn't see you go to the bathroom prior to the date. So in my reference, I just think I'm not going to be eating that chips. So anyway, I wasn't that hungry. I just mostly waited for the main dish. So at this point, everything was great. I was like, wow, might be a second date until he said a comment. And I remember the comment that he told me. He was like, hey, how do you feel about going back to my place? And I actually was like, no, I have nothing against you. I just feel out of my safety, I rather us, be here and talk. And he was like, well, we can do more because of the fact that you're attractive and I'm attractive. We can go somewhere and find, and learn each other more. Now, if I was stupid, I would have been like, yes, but I know those words. Find each other more means we gonna be in your house half naked trying to do some stuff. So I already knew that wasn't gonna happen. So I remember he said a comment to me. He said, "Well, I am a fisherman, and I'm the type of fisherman that when I go out, I like to use a big net and catch a whole lot of fish. And whatever I don't like, I throw back." And I was like, "Oh, that was new." So I came back to him and I said, "Okay, well, I like to fish with a fishing rod because I like to deal with one man at a time or fish, whatever we think." But I said man, because if I don't like them, I can just throw it right back and get back to it. So I don't know if he liked it or not, but I gave him a hug and that was the end of that day. I'm laughing off of that because that was funny. So, and it's funny because I dated. I mean, I'm in the funniest story, I'll be honest, I went to, and this was actually when I was living down in another part of the South. They had a speed dating. And I remember it was so many women and not a lot of men that the women had to go around the men. And oh my goodness, I got to write a book about that because that was funny. Because like it was one guy, he didn't even want to come because his friend made him come. I think one guy, nothing against him, but I could think something was going on with his eye because I don't know if he was looking at me or the ceiling. And then I had one guy, he was young, but I was like, I can't deal with no young man. I'm 30 something, and this guy's 25. I'm like, oh, I don't have time to teach nobody stuff. And then he was like, and then, oh, I have friends. We can be friends. I'm like, sweetheart, I used friends when you was in diapers. So please, there's nothing you can tell me about the word friend. So long story short, I did a lot of dating. And then lo and behold, I had to, like my husband told me, I had to break my foot to meet him. But what I liked about my husband is we really did not date. It was more of a, we knew what we wanted. I think one thing, and it's funny, and I'll tell this one comment because I'm not going to really talk too much about my marriage. I will talk about marriage life, but not my marriage. But I remember when we first started talking, he was like, "Well, I'm not going to marry you to free you." And I remember telling him that you don't have to worry about that because I've been freed since 1863. It's called the Emancipation Proclamation. So there's nothing else you can free me from. And I remember he laughed, but I think that's when I knew that I had something because, some men could have took it the wrong way, but he didn't. So to summarize it up, dating should be fun. It shouldn't be hard. It shouldn't be difficult. You shouldn't already have your wedding dress picked out or your tuxedo. Just enjoy the moment. Get dressed. Look your best. Meet the person there. If you pick them up, I'll be honest, pick them up on the third, fourth, fifth date after, the crazy radar is gone or whatever. But most of all, just realize that dating is not the end all to be all. It's actually an opportunity just to see who's out there, an opportunity to see what you may or may not want. It's great to make a list of what you want in a person, but be realistic about the list. If a person made a list about you, would it be 5,468 pages long or would it be three things? So if it's that long, then that ain't really good. But just enjoy yourself. Make a friend. I'll be honest. Get a free meal out of this shoot. The way gas prices and food prices is, shoot, I would date right now. But all in all, this is a little bit longer than 15 minutes, but I felt like this was a cute little session and I wanted to play it out. But mostly I can say, and I'm always going to say something positive at the end of my podcast, just be who you are. Love yourself first. First love is self love. And when you can love yourself and know who you are as an individual, then nobody or nothing can get in your way. And if they really do like you and begin to love you, they will accept you for who you are. So blessings up, praises down, and have a wonderful day or evening or wherever you're at in the country.